Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. Happy Halloween. We hope you're feeling spooktacular. We're here just like every day to answer your media and production questions, which we do 7 days a week. Alexander, let's dive into the first question.
First question comes from Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York. Morning, everyone. What does the panel think of the upgraded Middle Control Pro 3.0?
Alex?
It looks like they've made a huge jump in the kind of control that's available with middle things. So this is the software basically that now the cool thing about the software is that it integrates a lot of different control. You have obviously some desktop control, but you also have you can use a variety of different joysticks and game controllers as well as your Stream Decks, and this will allow you to control things like your Ronin heads. As well as the camera. The Pro will also do an enormous amount of control over Sony cameras, for instance. So there's a lot of, I think the free version will do ATEMs and so on and so forth. I think the Pro version adds all the Sony controls to it. I think it's about $200, I think, or 190 euros or something like that when I saw it go by. So for the licensing, but it looks like, I haven't used it yet, but it looks really impressive.
Guy?
Yeah, it depends on what you really want to do and what environment you're in. It is exciting, but keep in mind of all the stuff that you need, the components, all the pieces of the puzzle. So if you get a DJI, let's say an RS4 Pro, and you're in at $1,000 right there. So maybe you already have an FX3 and you're like, hey, this is great, I want to control this. But then think about the lensing and how you control that lens. So if you have manual lenses, now you're going to need some kind of nucleus or something like that. So it's the middle things, software, which there's a free version as well, and then it goes up to $199 to get into the more advanced stuff. It's super cool that you can go in here and tweak the color and things like that. We've always wanted that, but to me, I just go, well, at what point do I just say I'd rather just get a UE150 or a UE160 or the Canon CRN 500 and or an FR7 at the $12,000 mark, because I can do so much more natively and I'm not Mickey Mousing with a bunch of weird stuff by a third party. So really think about what you're getting into. I mean, the video is cool, but for me as somebody who does this, I'd be like hesitant, unless I really beat on it. And we've used stuff like this with Noah Sargent's Tesla events with the RS4 and being able to track stuff, and it's cool. We put an FX6 on it, and it could handle, like, here's how big that RS4 is. It'll do a camera up to 10 pounds, but then you're at $1,099 on that, and you get up in price pretty quick. And then you need the APCR Mini, which is the USB device that attaches. So that's $538, and then you need some kind of remote. So you really start to get up there, and you really got a bunch of little components to make all this stuff work. And so anything could go wrong, and that's what scares me. I like that's my camera, this is my controller, and it's all made by the same manufacturer, and it works.
Alex?
Yeah, and I agree with Guy that, a lot of the stuff that I mean, when I'm using PTZs generally, I'm using FR7s. Like, I don't really, and I have to admit I'm a snob. I really won't do my shows with less than a Super 35 sensor. So that's the smallest sensor that mostly gets rid of all the other PTZs in my, that I might be using. So for me, the advantage, if I had a studio that I want to kind of build out a cool studio that has that kind of short depth of field, and I want to do that with PTZs, I could see, I don't know if I'd want to take this on the road as much, but I could definitely see building a studio around this where, with all those little bits and bobs, you're still ending up with something that's probably less expensive that has really good sensors. You're able to now have these Ronins with, full frame sensors, and you could probably be getting into a full frame sensor with the Ronin head, $5,000 or $6,000. There's no other way to do that, is per head is to get to that image quality, and then be able to control it. So I think that might be the argument if someone wanted to build one of these.
And the other thing that is worth noting is on their website, they say when we say that we support Sony mirrorless cameras, camcorders, it's iris, ISO, shutter, focus, ND filter. I don't see any mention of color. So I don't think that ATEM Sony link means that you're all of a sudden going to be able to shade, because there's some translation that they're not doing between the Blackmagic color science and what's on the Sony. So just, read the fine print.
And they're not showing the middle things controller, but Guy, that's required for all of this to work.
I'm pretty sure that, so that's the thing. New to the software is the Visca control as well. So you don't have to use their stuff. And so they do say that you could use like any Xbox controller but it all depends on what control you want and at what point in time. And CJ, in the video, they do show them controlling certain Sony models with the ATEM color shading. So it is in there. That's what's exciting about this is, well, think about it. For $200, if you really can dial this in with the cheapest Sonys, and maybe you don't need color, but some of the lower end ones, it is pretty compelling for like a 4-camera shoot. Like I'll say that. Like I would love to have some of these features, but again, to me, like I'd rather rent something or hire somebody in that'll bring in 4 FR7s that I know will work every time. Maybe in a year, once this gets beat up on by a bunch of people, and I'll trust it. But right now, it's one of those things. And those guys are they're broadcasters. If you watch Middle Things videos, that guy, he's in a lot of sporting events and things like that. So I'm sure it works, but it's one of those things where I got to beat on it and see friends or see productions where I know for sure that USB-C cable is not going to come undone when somebody's moving something around and lose my connectivity in the middle of an important shot.
I just don't. I guess I don't understand. Like I don't understand where they're. I guess in the marketing for this, they don't show any requirement for another piece of hardware to control the cameras. Oh, I guess I see. I guess I see it here. Okay, I got it. So you need that little box.
Yeah, that little box, that $500 box is what does the translation from Ethernet to USB-C.
Got it. Okay.
And then I found that part in the video guy. It looks like he's controlling iris. Did you see them
there's
actually
color
using
in there.
the shader?
Yeah,
I see. I see this. But
yeah, he controls color at one point in that video.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll have to get one, play with it. Next question.
This one is from Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida, USA. How do you open ports on a GCP VM for MS Remote Desktop Control?
John?
You don't. You never do that. You build a VPN tunnel and then connect to it over the ports that are available because now you're on the same network. Do not open ports to the public for remote desktop. You're just asking for a nightmare, and everybody will be knocking at the door constantly.
Hey, Guy?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you have to do this in GCP, there's other things like Splashtop, or I was going to say, what are you using, and do you really need to open up those ports? If, like in mine, I have mine open up for SRT, so here you could see where you could say like, hey, here's my firewall rules, and I could punch a hole through and say only allow these to this NVIDIA gaming Windows server, and here's the internal IP address. But that's for doing specific things like allowing traffic in from like wherever your source is so that other people can't get in there as well. So you just really got to be careful opening up ports. And if you're going to do this in GCP, is a reason that you have to be in there because it's tough to get things like these NVIDIA gaming servers. I had to meet with Google to be able to get these, whereas with AWS, I just send a request and they give me what I need. This was like an interview process to get these kind of instances to run vMix or run it. So it depends on what you want to do, and if you want to just use like a shadow PC and then use like VNC or one of the other ones where it gives you the instructions readily available, or their browser that allow you to go ahead and navigate full Windows from a browser.
And John, would this be a use case that you think somebody putting up a tailscale, tailnet kind of a deal would be a good fit for?
Yeah, you can also just use like the native features within GCP to build a tunnel. If you're going to port forward anything, if you can, I would prefer a WAF be in front of it, a web application firewall, which is going to be able to look at the traffic and understand if there's any threats coming, as well as look at, if you can, limit what public IPs can actually access those port forwards as well. So just anytime you're exposing yourself to the internet, just make sure you're very, very comfortable with what can talk to it, how it can talk. Just be very specific. This is not like it works and now I leave it alone. If it works, okay, could it maybe be more secure? I would, have a security expert look at this and make sure you're not exposing your productions in any way.
Next question.
This one's from David Brady in New York City, New York. How to ensure authenticity in news gathering? Sony releases the first camera authenticity solution for broadcasters. Will others follow suit?
Alexander.
So there's going to be a lot of people that are developing tools for this, and it looks like this is clearly geared towards Sony's cameras. But it's going to be interesting how this stuff plays out. I think my suspicion is that I think this is going to be a real mess until there's one unified standard. I mean, just look what happened with the Internet of Things devices. There's so many different standards, and nobody can agree on anything, and some protocols don't talk to other protocols. I don't know how we can really, I mean, it may be great for Sony cameras if it works, if the technology is proven, but we need something that we can figure out for basically something that's shot on any camera. I don't know how you do that. We would need some kind of standard body for that.
Courtney?
Well, there is kind of a standard body. It's the C2PA, the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authentication. They have a standard, and that's what is incorporated in this new Sony push. The problem is with news gathering is you have to verify that the video was shot by an original camera, and this is the original image. It hasn't been stepped on, modified, etc. But so these cameras, and there's a list of them here, the Alpha interchangeable lenses, Alpha 1, Alpha 9, 3, the cinema camera lines, the FX3, the FX30, and the new XD Cam memory camcorder, which may not support depth information. The problem is you could have somebody using one of these cameras that has this authentication steganography built in, where it includes this encrypted authentication into the image, that they could be standing in front of a video screen, and everything on the video screen could be totally AI generated, and the guy in the front could be real, but without the depth information. So it has to have some type of depth sensor to know that everything in the image was captured in real time, in real life, and not as a synthesized image that was composited somehow, or even live shot with a video screen behind them. So it can get a little sticky. Other cameras may have to include this, but they're going to have some type of LiDAR or some type of depth sensor to avoid that situation where somebody is putting something bogus in the background, where they're saying, "I'm here at Hurricane Melania," etc., and it's really they're standing in a studio somewhere.
Or in the water and somebody's with a boat walking by. Alex?
Yeah, this is a kind of a chicken or egg problem, which is that you can't get the provenance to start working unless you start to use it. And so somebody has to start. And so Sony's one of the first folks to start doing this. And so the idea is that, as Courtney outlined, is that the depth information is very important, and they're using, I believe it's the autofocus is what their autofocus sensors are giving it back depth information, because they have it. They have all those little points that are going out there, and so they're gonna gather that, and they're gonna package it into the file. Now, the next thing it lays down is, okay, where does that go from there? So it's not a matter of you now have to have Photoshop and everybody else follow along with that process of when does it get erased, or maybe you can't go through Photoshop. Maybe it can only go straight to something. But the point is that every part of that chain now has to add that. Anything that might touch that image has to be able to support the data that's getting embedded into it. And if it goes away, then no one knows if it's real or not. So everyone, and this is, I think it's going to be probably pretty important for news gathering over time. It's its early days, and there'll be a lot of images people use anyway, but there's going to be some point where people go, is that real? I mean, I think that right now, the number one response to everything that goes up on X is, Grok, is this real? Like, did this actually happen? And I think people are constantly questioning what they're looking at. And so having that certification, I think that with the depth data, as Courtney laid out, and this information and the provenance of knowing that it made it through the pipeline without losing that, I think there's a good chance that people would go, okay, well, that happened. Now, that doesn't tell you the whole truth. If I make the camera higher, it looks one way. If I make it lower or use a wide angle, those are all the old tricks of news gathering that existed before. So it doesn't mean you trust everything that you see or trust how it works. But it will give you some data that this was probably not at least AI generated or heavily edited.
Next question.
Next question is coming in from the QR code. This is David Ragsdale in Wilmington, Massachusetts. I watch most Wednesday office hours episodes and have noticed that Mickey is never listed in the morning email and isn't listed in the post-show credits as a panelist. Am I the only one who can see and hear him as in The Sixth Sense?
Alex?
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. Mickey is on the show.
Who is this Mickey
you.
of which you speak?
Mickey is he's on the show. Does he talk when he's on the show when you see him? I don't understand. You have to join. Mickey's on the back end, and you have to join at a certain time to end up in the email. And he's always still finishing work before we get there, so the email goes out before he does.
Next question.
Andre Dole in Berlin is asking, I will possibly have to stream an event or a customer to YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. What are the things I have to pay attention to? Best practices.
Jason?
I'll leave the best practices to Alex. The easiest way to do this by a country mile is Restream, restream.io. Yeah, it's expensive and it does the job, but yeah, that's all there is to it.
Alex?
Yeah, I would say that Restream is the easiest way to do it. I mean, we've had enough anomalies with Restream that if I'm getting paid to stream something, I don't use Restream. So I use, I'll build something in AWS that is going to allow me to bring that signal in and then redistribute it, and I'll build it by from scratch that way, because I have more control over it. I'm able to separate those things out. And again, we've had some issues where Restream drops what we're working on, and you have to jiggle the handle a little bit to get it turned back on again. So, and especially if we're doing any kind of captioning and other things like that, it's not that Restream can't do it, it just doesn't do it all the time. And so that's been the challenge that we've had in the past with the platform, but it is the easiest way to do this. Like that is definitely, like if you don't want to figure out how to use AWS, Restream is you're going to send it up and your chances of success are probably in the high 90s. That's just a little lower than what I'm used to. The only other thing I would say is that, you either have to custom build everything for each one of these, or you need to think about certain things. Like, for instance, all of these platforms, I know you're in Berlin, all of these platforms run at 30 frames a second or 60 frames a second. They do not do 25 frames a second. And so the mistake that most people do in Europe is now there's all kinds of problems because now you get flickering and you got to figure a whole bunch of other things out. But if you run your show at 25 frames a second, it is being converted live to 30 frames a second. And that's not usually a good look if you have a lot of pans or any kind of big moves with your cameras. You're going to see breakout. You're going to see jittery because they do not support 25 frames a second live, and they never will. Like when you talk to them, that horse is so far out of the corral, into the pasture, into the mountains. They're not having that conversation anymore. It's just too hard for them to support more formats.
Alexander?
Yeah, like Alex said, it can get expensive. The thing with Restream, I used it for a little while, and I did find it quirky. One of the nice features that it has, though, is the ability to transcode. You pay extra for this. So obviously, one of the things you need to pay attention to with all these platforms, like Alex says, not just frame rate, but also all the other requirements. So you're going to want to check the documentation on all these platforms to ensure that you're sending the correct amount of data to them, that the audio is encoded in the correct format at the right bit rate, all of these things that you have to consider, resolution. So the transcoding service that Restream charges you for, you can just send it a blob of data and it will just transcode that data to conform to each individual platform. So you don't even have to think about it, but it does get expensive, and yeah, it's not 100% reliable. Sometimes there are issues. I've had some weird issues with the way it kind of sums all the live chat comments, and I've just had things not work in their web interface for inexplicable reasons.
Guy?
Yeah, you might also want to look at StreamYard to hit a couple of them. You can't do all four at the same time, but it does start to integrate some of the chat. So when you're doing your preliminary tests, I would not only just look at Restream, because how are you going to do the 16:9 and the 9:16? Because the different platforms have the different, vertical versus horizontal video. So how are you going to handle that? But if you go to StreamYard's site and you look at this page that's called multi-streaming, you could see that they have the stream anywhere type thing. But it also, the important thing is, and I see it in the next question as well, is comments from various platforms. So you get the avatar that says that this one's from Twitch, this one's from Facebook, this one's from YouTube. So it integrates it, and it might be a little smoother experience than just Restream. So I would test both.
Next question.
This one's from Andre Delay in Berlin. In addition to streaming to 4 platforms, I will possibly need to aggregate chat messages from all 4 platforms. Any clever ways to do so? vMix, VDO, and H2R.
Jason.
Yeah, Restream will do this, but everyone is completely right. It does get a little bit weird, and last I checked, it doesn't actually show you who's from where all the time. I've also never tried it with TikTok, so there's that.
Alex?
We tell everyone, we turn off all the comments and tell people not to use it, and we use this. So we use a QR code to send them all to one place. Now, we use Makana, and if you reach out to me, we can talk about that. But there's other, whether it's this or something else to send the questions in, we bypass all the comments and questions. It's chaos. Like you have a whole bunch of fragmented conversations going on. I don't think that makes a good. I've done this, a couple thousand events, and it never works out well. I mean, it's fine. It's people who don't know what they're looking at don't care, but it's not a unified experience for everyone. The thing that I would also think about is when you look at streaming to 4 platforms, what we usually try. Now, you may have a client that's gone down the path, and this is what they're going to do, and it is what it is. We try to have them not do what you're doing, which is don't stream the same thing to 4 different platforms. Use each platform for something different. So you may use a YouTube for the main show, which is usually the best way to do a main show, is because YouTube's the most stable. You might use TikTok for live coming up, Instagram for something. You find different things that each one of these platforms does well, and have them do those things, because what that does is it moves your audience. What you're trying to do most of the time when you do multicast. I don't know what your client's trying to do. When my clients are trying to do it, they're trying to cross-pollinate between their followings. And so the best way to cross-pollinate is not to serve each following the same thing. The way to cross-pollinate is to tell them, hey, we're in Facebook now, but we're going to go over YouTube and do the show. And then when we finish the show, we're going to do a post-show. What you're doing is you're taking the audience from one social network and moving them to the other one, and then moving them to another one, and you're moving them around through that process, and you end up with more subscribers through all of those. They get there, they know that channel now exists, they subscribe to it. So, kind of taking them through those things allows you to serve all the platforms, because you want to keep them all viable, and to cross-pollinate, because the most important thing is to continue to cross-pollinate subscribers so that you're never dependent on one.
Next question.
Vili in Henderson, Texas. I'm looking to rack mount a Shure wireless receiver alongside a Peplink B-One. Is there a way to extend the antennas for optimal transmission while keeping the receiver's front panel visible in the rack? If so, what's recommended?
Alexander.
Yeah, so when you buy wireless systems, they will typically, for example, like Shure, will ship the wireless system with rack ears and with a hole punch out on the front panel, so you can actually just run a coax cable from the antenna ports on the back and relocate them to the front. They will include the mounting hardware for this, so hopefully you haven't lost it. If you've lost that or decided to throw it out at some point thinking, I will never ever rack mount this stuff, thankfully you can buy those rack mount kits, just order it from Shure. But yes, you can do that, and you can just relocate the factory quarter wave antennas that came in the box and put them in the front. Of course, you can also use you can also use other antennas as well. Shure and other companies like Sennheiser, they all sell a variety of different omnidirectional or directional antennas, and then you can just basically just run long coax cables, and basically those things have a 5/8 thread mount, and you can just stick them on a mic stand and just point those antennas right across the stage.
Courtney?
Yeah, I didn't quite understand whether you said transmission, and I'm not sure whether you were talking about the PepWave or the wireless receivers for the microphone. So as was mentioned about the wireless receivers for the microphone, there are things to bear in mind if you're going to remotely mount the antennas. Here's a directional antenna that Shure makes for their 400, their UHF wireless receivers. This one, you have to tell it which frequency range you're in, 900 megahertz or 450 to 950. It's a directional shark fin. A thing to bear in mind is you might want to have some gain on these antennas by making it a directional antenna. It adds gain because for every foot of coax that you add, there's a certain amount of dB loss of signal over that coax. So you will reduce the level of your signal coming in from that antenna, and it becomes, if you put too long a coax on it, you're actually better off with the whip that's attached to the back of the receiver, or putting the receiver up high and shortening the length. If you're talking about the PepWave, now PepWave does make a 5G B series, which has a 5G modem in it. So if you're talking about transmitting from the PepWave over the 5G modem, this does have 4 antennas on the back. These connectors come with little short antennas that are designed, but if you're going to remote those, you have to remote all 4 of those antennas, and they have to maintain the same distance between those antennas when you put them in remote. And as with the others, remember, adding coax drops your signal level. So unless it's an active antenna matrix, you're going to have a reduction of signal if you get too long in the coax, even though you move the antennas to a better place that aren't interfering with your viewing it in the rack.
Next question.
Angelo Jack in Brooklyn, New York asks, had major office fire and now rebuilding. Any best practices to consider when now connecting multiple offices and camera control?
Alex?
Sorry to hear that, Angelo. But this is a good opportunity for you to do all the things that we always tell people to do before they put the walls back on. So I think that the number one thing, the minimum requirement is you want to run TAC12 to every room that you can get a hold of. Make sure that you have larger conduits and some way to thread that through. So some kind of chase cable that you can pull new things through. But conduit is super important. I'm a big fan of 3-inch, but something, getting a lot of space there so that you can add new things. But I would really consider TAC12 as your minimum and bring it all back to somewhere where you're going to do a cross switch to those. That's going to make everything easier. Now, there's other things that can make it that you might want to add so that you don't have to think about the fiber, and that can be running some, Cat 8 or whatever through those things, Cat 7, Cat 8, through there, as well as potentially running some SDI, some BNC through there, so that you just have something you can just very quickly hook up. Now, you don't have to do anything with that fiber. It's just that once you put the walls up, it's a lot harder to put it through. So get it in there and roll it up. Now, the thing that we found the most useful in a lot of larger locations or larger installs, and I don't know how many offices that you're talking about here, is having kind of a lunchbox that has a breakout of all the things that you need. It has SDI and analog and other things like that. And that lunchbox has the converters in it, and most importantly, it has the fiber there. So you're plugging the fiber into that. So rather than trying to figure out what to do with the wall, we just have a wall that closes, a little gap that closes up, and it just disappears into the wall. When you open it up, you just have cables, and you plug those into your lunchbox. That way you can constantly change what's in that lunchbox, have different lunchboxes, have different missions. But the key is you've got all the signal that's going back and forth. But I would definitely strongly consider getting fiber between them, because anything you want to pass, whether it's internet or network, video, audio, all of those things are going to be really happy with a lot of glass.
Courtney?
Yeah, do what Alex said and run that TAC12, and if you run to a server room or let's say a closet where you keep your server information and all the distribution for your fiber, get a Halon fire suppression system. These are available. Unlike sprinklers, they won't soak your equipment and ruin it. However, halon gas is not very good for human consumption, so you probably have to put it in a sealed-off closet or separately air-conditioned closet so that it doesn't share the same air handling system as the humans in there. And if this is triggered, it will extinguish a fire quickly, so you won't burn down your next office, and it won't also kill all of your equipment with water.
And this has been one of my favorite questions to see the chat light up about in a while. Because there was a comment of, like, do you really need tactile on the walls? And then it's like, oh, if you have very fat rats. And then David Brady from New York comes in, says, New York City, forget about it. And Mickey says the fiber is what keeps the rats regular. And if you're watching us on YouTube, we're happy you're here. Only problem is you're missing all that stuff in the chat. You're missing half the show. We're on every morning, 7 a.m. Pacific. And you got to be in Makana. If you go to officehours.global/join and sign up for our mailing list there, you can get the links on how to get into Makana and be not only watching the show, but being part of the show, voting on what questions get answered, also in the chat, which is always a great time. So check it out, officehours.global/join. We'll see you live tomorrow. Next question.
David Brady in New York City, New York asks, I have a 20-foot statue I need to LiDAR capture. What apps and method would be best? I have full access to the grounds and can set up a ladder, but what app would be best?
Jason.
Okay, I think your best app here is Polycam. I looked this up on Google Maps. This is a tricky capture. I would want to do scaffolding, not just a ladder, but scaffolding. If you don't do it that way, you're going to be setting up. You're going to be moving that ladder quite a bit. This is going to be hard. The good news is it doesn't actually look like it's 20 feet tall from its feet to its head. It just looks like it's 20 feet off of the street. But yeah, I'd use Polycam.
Alex?
Yeah, I probably would use Polycam as well. What you want to do is there's an object capture in Polycam that will take lots and lots of photos, up to 2,000 photos. And it's going to use some of the LiDAR to align those photos. So it's using the structured light to calibrate the photos, or the unstructured light. You're going to get a lot more detail from a photogrammetry solution. Now, one thing you want to look at in those pictures that you showed already showed that, but you want to make sure that you're shooting on a cloudy day. You may want to put a white sheet or a white something at around the base. That'll reflect a bunch of light up, because whereas hat is going to be dark, and so it'll just do a little bit of bounce and you're going to end up cutting that out anyway. So all around, not at his base, but all around that base, I try to put something white that's going to bounce up, and you'll find you get a lot more light under the hat, and that's just going to be easier for you to grab onto that. You will want a ladder. The main thing is be careful of not capturing a lot of shadowing. So by doing it on a really cloudy day. And doing it if the perfect situation is a cloudy day between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. typically, and that is because the sun doesn't move as much. So as you're shooting, this will take you half an hour to shoot everything, in my opinion, 15 minutes to half an hour, somewhere in that range to shoot it. And you'll get the key is that the photogrammetry with all the photos, it will give you an incredible amount of detail, that's there. But the main thing you want to do is not have it changing reflection too much. Now, if it's shiny, you're going to see some reflection changes there, and that might be something you have to kind of work with later. But you may have to resurface it. It's a relatively basic surface, so you could build a texture map from what you have there later. So you probably are just going to end up worrying about the geometry. But I think that thinking about getting that ladder. The hardest part is going to be the area between the back and fortunately there's not a lot of detail, but the hardest part is the back to the wall is where you're going to have a hard time getting angles on it to do that. It's important. You can use an iPhone. If you're going to use a still camera, you can get much higher resolution. So renting something the other way to go from this for photogrammetry is to go out and get a Sony or something that's 60 megapixels and do the same thing. Getting lots and lots of pixels is going to help. So shooting something with a high res camera, the key is you don't want to change focus too often, because focus changes the effective focal length a little bit. And you definitely you want a fixed lens, either a fixed lens or a lockable lens. Like the Canon 24-70 actually will lock at 24. You can lock it so it just stays there. And so you can do that, but you want to, generally the widest that the camera will go, 24 is fine. You don't want anything that's going to distort, but 24 millimeters is a pretty good focal length. And then wander around and get it and get that 60 megapixel per image shots, and then you can take it into Metashape or other things to do it as well. So those are a couple different options. Obviously, Polycam on the phone If you want to go to bigger cameras, Metashape is probably a pretty good solution there. And then what will end up happening is you'll have some errata. The shoulders will have noise and stuff like that. The best place to manage that and also to do decimation later when you need it is most likely ZBrush. So you take it in a ZBrush and you kind of paint out all the little problems that you might have.
Next question.
Jeff Veely in Henderson, Texas asks, I'd like to mount a Raspberry Pi 4 on our rental sound system to fade in and out background music upon a single button press. I'm thinking PlayoutBee for software. What's the best button for one press control?
Alex?
The way we did that in the past is we actually had an Arduino board with an Ethernet connection. We used the Arduino Shield and we printed a box with a button. And we printed a box, we got a button, and we put it in there. We built it that way. I'm not saying that's the best way to do it. It's the only way I've done it. And it was great because we were able to brand it and make it look just the way that we wanted to deliver it to the client. I don't know of a single button. Obviously, Stream Decks are available, and you can get one that doesn't have very many buttons. But as far as a single button that's just there to hit it, we found that to be pretty effective.
Guy?
Yeah, I'd have to ask, is there simpler, just analog kind of ways to do this? I mean, with an old device, some kind of player. But yeah, the Stream Deck Plus, even though it has a bunch of buttons, it does have the dials that you can go ahead and program as needed for volume and whatnot. And then it can run over PoE. So if you have it hooked up with Pi, you could have what they call a hat, which would give that thing power. The thing, if you just decide to use Companion with PlayoutBee, is be aware that it doesn't have any kind of volume control here. So when you go in here, it's just, you could add clips and the transport mechanism for play and pause and stop. So that'll get you going. We actually do this with vMix, and then we have our button set to 0, 25, 50, 75, and full. So you have 4 buttons in a line, but I understand that you don't want to complicate things. That's why I'm saying, isn't there an analog way to do this with some kind of simpler way? I think you might be overthinking it.
Courtney?
Yeah, I mean, maybe PlayoutBee. If Jonas is on, you could ask him if he has a fade in, fade out way to handle music. Another thing I use, what I use a lot for this stuff is an Android app, but that runs on any old Android phone. If you can find an old recycled one somewhere, is Power Amp. This is an app that's a Android app, but it has you can set up a playlist of songs. It handles almost every type of audio format, FLAC and WAV files and MP3s. AAC, everything else, and you can set it up to crossfade between pieces in your playlist, and so it probably has a way to set fade in and fade out. So take a look at Power Amp. There's a free version and a paid version. It only runs on Android. I don't know if they have a version that will run on a Raspberry Pi, but take a look at it. You can get an old phone just to play it back.
And if you have the flexibility to not use a button, some of the comments going back and forth in the chat is that you may want to consider a fader and not just a button. So that way you have control over the speed and don't need to depend on the software solution to do it for you. Next question.
Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas asks, could the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 or any similar gimbal cameras be adapted for use as a streaming webcam like the Insta360 Link?
John.
It does have a USB output, so you could bring that into a computer or a mobile phone and then stream from it. I don't know if it's the best way to do things, but yes, it has a UVC output, so you could use it as a webcam.
And then they also, and again, depending on your use case, this may or may not be the best camera for the job, but because it is a fairly small sensor, and even though it feels bigger than some of the earlier versions of those Osmos, I've brought back footage from this and felt that it was lacking. But the DJI Mimo app that you download to control the gimbal from your phone does have live streaming capabilities that are built in there, and they support that natively within their platform. If you're wanting to have something kind of pre-built as opposed to John's way, which is also valid to use it as UVC. Guy?
yeah, the other device that you might want to pick up is one of these little ob spots that converts the output of UVC to HDMI, so then you can put it into some other kind of encoder. We used the Osmo with one of these with a live view, so that's how we were able to stream from that camera, and it worked well. So.
Hey, if you've got questions, we're open for you 24/7 at askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. There's nothing to log into, nothing to sign up for. All you got to do is throw in your name, throw in your question, and we'll start working those in over the next few shows. Next question.
Brian Taylor in Washington, D.C. asks, is it critical to require a person on a crew to not only act as an equipment operator, but also be able to troubleshoot the equipment they're operating?
Jason?
Is it critical? I mean, no, but it's a really, really good idea. I'll leave it at that.
Alex?
In most productions that we have, we don't expect the camera operators to know anything other than pointing and shooting. So we don't have, we have an EIC. We typically have a camera tech. Now, so oftentimes that camera tech may be one of the camera operators, but we bring a person in that knows the ins and outs of all the cameras. But we usually require very little of the camera operators once they are up there. We're looking for the talent to frame and to zoom in and do whatever else they need to do and follow instructions, do all the things that we need out of camera operators. And if we require them to know everything about every camera, it makes the pool of operators that we have available to us very small, because the vast majority of camera operators, even if they think they know how to use the cameras, rarely know how to use them very well. So we tend not to rely on their ability to do that, because a lot of our stuff is very technical and the cameras have to be set at a very technical level. And so we pick a person, sometimes a camera operator, to be the camera person to set all of that stuff up. And then everybody else just has to, tell us when there's something wrong. and oftentimes we're doing remote shading, so they're not doing anything other than they really are running the lens and the camera head. In India, we got into this habit because years ago in India, the senior camera operators never do anything with the camera. There's an assistant that sets the camera up and wires it up and does everything else well. They hang out and wait for the assistant to finish it, and then they come in and they just run and they were the assistant for oftentimes a decade before they were able to run the camera. And so that separation that we kind of got into the habit of in Delhi and Mumbai, we kept going, and that was maybe a decade ago.
Guy?
Yeah, it all depends on the size of the production. I mean, I wouldn't expect a lot of the people like a camera operator to be able to troubleshoot some of the more advanced things. Sometimes we come in and there's, fiber, there's some big multi-dyne back, and I don't expect anybody but just to know how to point and shoot and, adjust iris and focus if they're a camera operator. But as far as when things get crazy, and I've seen where the TD was also the EIC, and then all of a sudden he's trying to troubleshoot something, and now what the viewers are seeing in program is a shot that needs to be switched, and now you've got a bad show because the EIC ran off, or the TD ran off to go play EIC roles. And this is going to happen in smaller productions. So this is where having a crew where you can delegate, hey, if I have to step away, can you fill in this role? So the simpler role might be able to be handled by a more junior member. But I've seen stuff go sideways on everything from a PowerPoint where, and this is the other tip, is if you could have two PowerPoints, so have a primary and a backup, because if you do need to make a change, because sometimes people say, no, we need to update that slide, and that's the worst in the middle of a show, is to have to update a slide. But if you have a secondary machine that's running that, and you could make the change over there, and then the TD can cut to that PowerPoint 2 machine, now that saves you. But there's all kinds of troubles that pop up, whether it be audio, video. It's just kind of expect the unexpected. But having a great EIC that can set everything up ahead of time and knows, especially networking, because you could really get in trouble with somebody who that's inexperienced, doesn't know all the ins and outs in diagrams. This is why it's nice to have a diagram, so that if somebody does have to step in, if somebody gets hit by a lottery ticket or whatever, somebody doesn't show up, you'd still do have all these diagrams and these things that you can reference back to, so that in the heat of the moment, it's very clear as to what routes to what.
I'm sorry. Got hit by a lottery ticket is my new
That was
favorite.
good.
That was good. I was like, that's a new one.
Next question.
Brennan Goodyear in Columbus, Ohio asks, alternate for FR7 for high quality PTZ on a budget.
Alex?
Yeah, and this is Brandon also saw the middle things, middle control pro, and that's what this is referring to. Brandon, actually, who I know, is actually a perfect example of where this works because he already has all the Sony cameras, he has all the lenses, he has a couple Ronins, like he's mostly there. So it would be a very small investment for someone like Brandon and I think that's probably the target audience for this software and control is that you're not buying everything up from scratch. You have a bunch of Sonys, you may have a couple Ronins, and you're simply needing something to add the functionality to them, and you're technical enough to make it work, which Brandon is. So I think that he'd be a good example of it. Probably would be better. He'd be better off probably at least starting this way rather than using an FR7. There's a bunch of advantages, by the way. The larger Ronins, I believe, will also support better or larger lenses than the FR7 will as well, and still operate.
Next question.
This is one of my questions. What does everyone think of super chats on YouTube as a way to promote supporting the channel and engage with viewers if they want to ask questions and get a shout out?
John?
Yeah, I think it's useful. It's no different as the modern buy me a coffee. It's just a way to support creators. I feel like in large creators where the chat's moving very quickly, it can be a way for people to get attention. It can also, I think, feed into parasocial relationships, which is probably the negative, where they feel like they may have a relationship with someone because they're paying $5 to get a response every time they want attention. But overall, I think it's just a great way to, provide opportunities for people to subscribe or pay monthly. It's just another way to support someone you enjoy watching their content.
Alex?
Yeah, I love YouTube, as people know. We stream this to YouTube and everything else, but you'll notice that our comments are turned off because I just find them soul sucking. like in all the little mechanics around them and everything else, whether it's super chat or regular chats or anything else, the chaos, the mental chaos that I think that they create, because these are all gamification processes and everything else, I just find them for an authentic conversation to be really just brutal. And so I highly recommend, whether, it doesn't have to be Mukana, which is what we use for this show, but get something that sits outside of your social thing. It doesn't affect the number of people watching YouTube. I've actually talked to people about that. So the chat velocity means nothing to any viral spread or anything else. And so it's really not worth it. Like find another place for people to go. It could be Discord. It could be somewhere else. I mean, that's what Leo does. He streams to it, and people are talking in Discord. But get them out of the chat functions that are embedded. Because once you're in that, and people have that expectation, your feet. You poured concrete around your feet, and you're gonna find yourself in a river soon. Trying to swim upward from that. So just be really careful of using chat functions inside of social networks. It's a trap.
If you're interested in supporting our channel, there's a couple ways that you can do that. You can go to YouTube, obviously, like and subscribe to the channel, but you can also go to officehours.global/volunteer, where you can see where there's volunteer opportunities, both during the live show and around it. And then finally, you've got donate at officehours.global/donate, or go to the QR code here. We are a nonprofit and all that helps. Now, there's one more way to support the show that's really cool. We've got officehours.global hats, ohgshop.com. Check it out. We've got the Office Hours Global baseball cap. It's a great looking hat. It's got a little Office Hours on the back. So you can go to ohgshop.com, and it is a limited time sale. So if you're interested in supporting the channel, that is another great way to do it. Next question.
This one is from Jeff Veely in Henderson, Texas. I'd like to change the media assignment on the Ultimatte HD Mini using a Stream Deck via Companion, but it appears this function is only accessible through the Ultimatte Software Control. Is there a workaround?
The Ultimatte. John.
You can have a lot of fun and do what some of our friends have done and reverse engineer Blackmagic TCP settings, so you can actually use software to capture all the network commands that are happening, and then you can find out which one is actually driving this change that would happen from the control software, and then emulate that with a Companion. And I can send a little AI version of this, kind of get you started in understanding what the concepts are, and then you can move on from there.
Alex?
Yeah, we have 400 Teranex minis that don't have any API for them, but we need to know what their settings are and where they are and everything else. And to build on what John said, is the answer was to Wireshark the communication between the app and it's not particularly hard to see what's going on and make it work there and see what the communication is. And then we built an infrastructure that checks all of them every 6 hours. And that was all vibe coded, and not even complicated vibe coding. It's like Python in ChatGPT, and there's a whole web page that shows us the what's valid and what's not. And it's really powerful. So yeah, Wireshark is your friend.
Next question.
Paul Volhus in Austin, Texas. Today on Halloween DPReview is revamping all their forums. How can they compete with Discord, and why not bite the bullet and just use Discord?
John?
Yeah, I think there's a place for both. Discord has its own kind of way of doing things. It's much more real time, where forums are going to allow people to talk about a specific subject over a longer period of time in a contained space. Discord has tried to do this. They have threads and stuff like that. It is not as good. And so if you want real-time interaction with people, either over chat or in voice, Discord's the way to go. Forums, though, are still very, very popular and not going away anytime soon. Alex?
Yeah, I think for long-term technical conversations, forums are there. They do feel very old now. Like if you're used to Discord, they feel very ancient. So and there's a lot of vBulletin still floating around out there that different companies use. I have to admit, as someone who has grown up on forums and AOL forums in the 90s, and then I had my own vBulletin for PixelCore. I have a hard time. I just don't spend a lot of time in the forums anymore. I mean, for me, I'm in 25 Discord servers, and I just have a hard time shifting gears down into the forums at this point. So I go occasionally to them if I'm looking. Mostly, they show up as searches. If I'm looking for something, I end up in them. But I think that their flow is significantly more. I do agree with John that the threading in Discord I find to be completely painful. Like it just, as soon as someone changes a conversation to a thread or creates that type of thing, that's the end of the conversation from my perspective. Like it doesn't exist anymore. So yeah, it's a difficult problem. But I will say that I see groups from all backgrounds. Bands have really. That's the big thing that's happened. A lot of bands have embraced Discord. So it's not just a gaming thing. It's like every artist has a Discord at this point. And so that's and if it depends on what generation you're looking at as well.
Next question.
This one is coming in from Lois Richter in Davis, California. Some meeting folks want a mic to be used during introductions, one talking at a time. Is there a listening device, speaker, that can be held to the ear for just those minutes at the end of the meeting, not a production nor a recording?
Alexander?
Lois, I'm not sure I fully understand the problem that you're trying to solve, but it sounds to me like maybe you're asking about an in-ear monitor system of some kind. I'm guessing you have remote participants in a meeting that you need to hear. I'm not sure if it's that you're just trying to avoid running an open speaker. Maybe you're dealing with issues with feedback in that small room that you're in, because I know that room that you're talking about because I've seen the photos of the space before. But you can get wireless in-ear monitor systems. There are a variety of options there, but might need more clarification on the exact problem that you're trying to solve here.
Would it be an assisted listening device kind of a situation, or am I reading that incorrectly?
I'm not sure. She says listening device, but then she says speaker also. So
go ahead, Courtney.
It's a bit.
Yeah, I was thinking, if you've ever seen pictures of the UN, they have these over-ear listening device for the translators that they can just pick up. And because there's different people sitting in those seats, you don't want to have an in-ear device because you have health issues with sharing those things sticking in your ear. But there's it just hangs on the outside of your ear as a speaker. So you might look for something like that and just have several of those things hooked up as an assisted listening device. That way you don't have to worry about, you can have over-ear headphones as well, but, a little more problematic than those simple little ear cups with a little speaker in them. that you see at the UN. I'm not sure where to get them and what brand they are. They're kind of old.
Guy?
Yeah, I don't know if this one will do what you want because it doesn't play back. But during COVID, there was a lot of teachers that were using Zoom and they didn't want to do the whole pile with a big microphone. So what they got was these little speakers that transmit wirelessly. This one's made by Zowie Tech. And basically, it's a head-worn mic that goes around the speaker. And then this is an amplified speaker that you could stick, like they would stick it next to their laptop. So it basically transmitted their voice and then you could hear it louder, and there's a little volume control there. So that might be helpful. It's only $38. So that might be one solution because they could have that and put it up to their ear and turn it up and turn it down. But the speaker would have to put that device on. But it's only, again, $38. It may solve your need. But I just don't understand the part of the question that says to hear it after, because you would have to record it somehow if they want to hear it later than real time.
Next question.
This is a QR code question from Jason in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I am a filmmaker and I have a rental of the URSA Immersive coming my way via Lensrentals. Where should I host what I make since YouTube can't do immersive? And when will Alex's YouTube page be up to share what he's learned so far on the platform?
Alex?
Yeah, there's a couple different hosting options. Vimeo is going to be supporting it, and there's a couple other platforms that we're about to start testing as well. It depends on what you're trying to put out. So there's I think it's front row. The name just changed, so it's in my head. But front row also will do that. And Brenton Henry, who I'm going to be doing more and more immersive discussions with, runs front row. So it depends on the kind of content you're doing. As far as when will more content come out? Monday. So I'm just finishing up the next video. This week the last couple of weeks have been a heavy production for me, and I actually shot some stuff with the camera, and it took me a week to kind of get things pulled back together. So anyway, I'm hoping to do three videos a week starting next week. So starting in November. So there'll be a mixture of immersive, spatial, and then also audio. There's so much going on with audio. Audio is at least half of the immersive experience, and understanding ASAF and APAC, which are Apple's the spatial audio format, the Apple spatial audio format, and the Apple positional audio codec are the two things that are just rolling out. So in addition to the visual stuff, we'll be talking about mics and talking about ambisonic and talking about all of those things as well. So, the best thing for you to do also is the questions that you're worried about if you're in office hours. I know you did this with a QR code, but if you're in our forum or in our Discord, you can reach out to me directly and ask questions. And I'm going to be, but some of the first questions, some of the first videos that I do over the next couple of weeks will be, hey, if you're just getting the camera, if you're just renting the camera, this is the stuff you need to know. And so that's going to be coming out over the next couple of weeks.
Next question.
This one's from Angelo Jack in Brooklyn, New York. Follow-up on office fire rebuild. Will need to connect remote office locations with camera control. Any advice here?
Alex?
Most of the time we've done this, we've built VPN, a VPN connection to, build out the network so that the other controllers are essentially on the same network that we're on. So that they can, and then most of these camera controls are all done via IP. So once you get a VPN connection between the two, there are other ways to do that, but those VPNs have been the way that we've managed it in most cases.
Next question.
Tony Mobley, Noonan, Georgia, USA asks, we had part worship in an apartment clubhouse. Internet was poor. Is there a mobile device that could help?
Courtney.
We mentioned it earlier as the Peplink B series 5G, because this has a 5G modem built into it, and it is a Wi-Fi router, as well as an internal wired router. So something like that, if there's good, you want to check with your phone first to find out how many bars you have on 5G with whatever wireless network you have on your phone to see if their reception is good in that area of that clubhouse.
Next question.
Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. I'm looking at getting a higher-end camera in March for South by Southwest other than the Sony ZVE10 Mark II, like the FX30, A7S, FX3, A7 IV, and A7 V unreleased. What are the differences other than the prices I listed?
John?
They all have different sensors, and they at least several of them have different purposes. So first, we need to understand if you're shooting stills or shooting video, or if you're going to do a hybrid of both. And then you need to decide on what's most important to you and what's going to be your primary. I mean, that will drive a lot of the decisions. If your primary video and you just want some stills, FX3 is not bad, as it has an actual shutter. But if you want to get into actual video, like FX3 is going to, I don't know, it's probably my choice if I was doing this for primary video. FX30 is not bad. It's obviously really affordable, but I like having that full frame sensor.
Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the FX3 and the FX30 are great cameras for this kind of thing. The autofocus is great. A lot of those things. Yeah, if you're doing this by yourself, though, strongly consider an iPhone 17 Pro. Like, just do it with an iPhone. There's a lot of breakout boxes and all kinds of other things, and build a rig around a smaller footprint that has a lot more, that just is a lot more fluid. These cameras are great, but you really need a team to do those, especially if you're going to try to put them out in real time. The more I use I'm using the 17s I'm pushing them pretty hard right now for a lot of the stuff, and I'm kind of amazed at the frame rates and the process. If you get a little iPhone 17 with a hard drive, connected to it, your capture capabilities are very high, of the kind of content that you can capture built into the camera. So really think hard about that before you go out and buy another camera or another mic. Paul, step away from the mics.
Hey, thank you, everyone, so much. What a great Halloween edition of Office Hours. Appreciate everyone being here. Thank you to our panelists for bringing your life experience today and every day. We all get smarter because no one of us is as smart as this crew. I mean, look at this. This is great. Also, thank you to our back-end crew working not only during the show but also around it to keep us moving forward. You're the bedrock of what we do, and it's really incredible, and we appreciate it. Also, thank you to our producers for keeping us. We had a ton of questions today. We got through a bunch, but we still had a couple that we had to send back. So if you asked via Makana, they'll be in your notes so that you can resubmit. And if you ask via the QR code, we'll start it again in on those on Monday. The Tlaloc traversal, had we needed to go out and go around on foot or by, physically to answer these questions, we would have went 28,000 miles. That's 45,000 kilometers, 220 million bananas for scale. See you in after hours. Hit by a lotto ticket. Congratulations,
Oh,
guy.
that
You are
was so
number
good.
92 on my list.
If we had a name for the show, that would have been it.
He got powerballed.
He got powerballed. He got mega millioned. What happened to Guy? He got powerballed.
He got powerballed.
One guy.
I just want to let you all know that if I won, I would still show up, at least for
One show.
one show.
To tell everyone goodbye.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, everybody. Drive in a
Moving
Maserati. Hi, everybody.
I'm moving to Fiji.
I'm the A2.
See everybody.
Happy Halloween. Trick or treat.
Spooky.